The book is Walden by Henry David Thoreau. My first quote comes from page 1154, where Thoreau states, "How long shall we sit in our porticos practicing idle and musty virtues, which any work would make impertinent?" I believe this quote is Thoreau questioning the necessity of religion, as a good portion of this book provides commentary on what is and is not truly necessary for sustaining a happy life, whatever that may mean to the individual. He also seems to be questioning the healthiness of consistently relying on prayer and faith to solve our problems, as opposed to making any physical effort at fixing them ourselves, thus making the faith impertinent, to use his words. And this is a relatable concept to me personally, because from the ages of, I don't know, 3 or 4 to maybe 11, I had gone to church with my grandparents voluntarily, um, kind of as a way to spend time with them and what have you. Um, and, those are arguably some of the most impressionable years for a youth. And although I enjoyed the people and still, I still have friends from those days, I simply, I simply was not encapsulated or very impressed by what was being taught there. It just wasn't my thing. And I was just so used to every day, nothing ever just happened. It was always because somebody did something to make that happen. It wasn't just, you know, food magically appears, right? And, mom had to make the food. Um, and I can assure you, my mother is a great person, but not a Holy Spirit. I still remember, however, the cold emptiness of the hallways of that church when nobody was around. I recall the constant chill and the anxiety that would flush over me wandering the empty, dim halls. And there was almost always in this one hall, next to the gym area, no lights on, but this door to the right, to the outside, right at the end of it. There was always an intersecting hallway at the end that led down a very dark, usually empty and soundless hallway. There was one classroom on the right side that rarely ever had anybody actually in there, and it it led into a room where they kept like music equipment and things like that. But in the hallway were two bathrooms, and there's still no lights, and they're claustrophobically small bathrooms with all tile. The only natural light coming in was from small basement-esque windows at the top of the wall. I always felt uneasy going down either of these hallways for no discernible reason. Maybe it was because although I felt comfortable with the layout of the church, and there was no chance that I would ever get lost there, I knew it was not where I belonged, simply because I was not like the other people there, and I did not have the faith and would much rather do something on my own and get the results as soon as I was willing to make any attempt than rely on an entity that I can't even prove exists. This is just my take on religion, but I feel as though it falls very much in line with Thoreau's. The next quote I will be going over is on page 1149. This quote is as follows: "I learned this, at least, by my experiment, that if one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours." In this quote, I believe that Thoreau is again making commentary on the fact that there's a laziness in the way that mankind approaches many of its problems. I personally see religion as almost a scapegoat. Um, and although I can recognize the merit of having, that faith that everything will be better as it is part of a plan, I think that the true entropy of life and the randomness surrounding it is something to not be ignored. Um, but there is little legitimate effort being put forth at least in the time in Thoreau's time, little effort being put forth, and rather people are simply waiting for their desires to seek them out and insert themselves into their lives with little to no interceding from them, which is what prayer is essentially. This seems to be a recurring theme in Walden. Thoreau seems to take problem with religion in the sense that he believes it leads to laziness and lack of accountability, because why should you blame yourself for something when you can blame it on the almighty plan? The way in which this quote can relate to my life personally is that I have laid out plans for what I want to do with my life, and once I had genuinely confirmed those plans in my mind, and begun to actually make steps towards those plans, it actually did affect my life. My plans are that I want a career in law enforcement, and because of this, I have applied for programs such as the police science class through my high school. I also took Criminal Justice 101 through LCC. I'm doing these things because I believe that they will genuinely prepare me for the career that I want, and there's no real discernible reason not to go through with things like that if I'm genuinely serious about doing this for a living. In order to prepare for this goal, I've become very much serious about my ability to handle firearms and my proficiency with them. Prior to my, prior to my epiphany that this is what I wanted to do with my life, I had seen guns as recreation and just something, fun. Shooting's fun. And although I still retain that, I still enjoy shooting very much. I've seen it more as something to master than something to just do for fun. I've gone to Front Sight, Nevada 2 times, which is a shooting class out of Pahrump, Nevada, about 45 minutes out of Las Vegas. Once for handgun and once for practical rifle. This means that I've practiced making shots under time pressure and clearing malfunctions under time pressure. These 2 firearm types are very common for law enforcement. You have your duty handgun and you have your patrol rifle. I feel as though it is necessary to at least prove to myself that I am capable of handling these weapons responsibly and effectively, and especially if I can do so at a younger age. And, there's no reason that I should deteriorate those skills as I grow older. The times in which I went were quite different in weather. I went for the handgun class in April of 2015. It was sandy and hot, and it was hard to wipe the sweat off your brow without rubbing sand into it. Whereas when I went in January of, I believe, 2017, for the practical rifle class, there was a day in which it was probably no more than 35 degrees outside, windy and raining, and I found that it is quite difficult to manipulate a firearm when you can't feel your fingers. But in April 2015, I was able to prove my efficiency with a handgun at 14 years old. This was a big accomplishment for me, as I felt that it was a stepping stone and an obstacle that I had to overcome to prove to myself and others that I could handle such a quintessential part of the job that could literally make the difference between whether or not myself and or others came home on a given night. In April, Front Sight was very sandy and hot. As it was a shooting school, there was an omnipresent scent of gunpowder. You can't go to a shooting class and not expect to smell gunpowder, but I mean, personally, I don't mind that. I like the smell of gunpowder. But when you step up to the firing line, if you enjoy shooting as much as I do, there's a sense of excitement because you're about to get to shoot, and that's the whole reason you're there, right? And I would often move the gravel with my feet and give myself a nice stable position to stand, and plant my feet firmly in these little divots that I had created for myself. And I focused on the target and thought in my head what I was going to do when I heard the buzzer. Then the high-pitched buzz sounded, and it seemed as though the world was slowed, this yellow-tinted world through my shooting glasses. as I whipped away the side of my jacket and rammed my hand down onto the rubbery grip of the sidearm on my hip. I ran my thumb over the release as I simultaneously ripped the firearm out of the holster and punched it out in front of me. Almost the instant that I saw my rear sights come close to the front sight, I had already had the slack taken out of the trigger and was applying pressure until the crack of the first round, followed by the light recoil and an audible click of the trigger resetting. I find it funny how even when your entire perception of the sound around you is blotted out by the snapping of gunshots to your left and right as you're on a firing line with 24 other people, that you can still, it's more like you're feeling the click of the trigger resetting than hearing it. But you know that it's happening because you've practiced it so many times. You know exactly when it's going to happen. And I don't know if you're genuinely feeling it or if it's your mind telling you that it's happening and artificially giving the stimulus that you heard the click, and because it's been so ingrained in you. I've always thought about that. But I qualified the handgun class at graduate rank. I missed only 21 points. I was 9 points away from distinguished graduate, which is the highest honor you can achieve at front sight. And I was incredibly proud of myself. I was 14 years old. There were people much older than me that scored less. And in order to pass, you had to miss no more than 35 points. It was a fantastic milestone for me. In my mind, at least, I thought that it was an incredible accomplishment. It was a 4-day class, and the first day was my first time ever shooting from concealment, which was how you have to shoot for the test if you want to qualify. And the class was also only my second time ever shooting out of a holster, but I had put my mind to it, and I was determined to do well on the test and prove myself, even just proving myself to myself. But I was absolutely determined, and lo and behold, I was able to have substantial improvement in even just the first day of practice.